opportunity to come and gather and worship, to come and be settled for a minute to reflect on our lives, to calm ourselves from the expectations of the world, to come and know that God's will for us is to live fully and abundantly in our lives and in our relationships. And how wonderful it is to come and be reminded of God's intention for us this day. It seems so appropriate that we would begin this sermon and reflection time with the anthem, Simple Gifts. It brings us to a place where we're reminded what is truly important in our life, which I think is partially what the lessons are saying. If your lives are anything like mine, September seems to come, and it seems to come as though we went from nice August pace into 100 miles an hour, so quickly, so frantically. For those of us who have young children in school, we know that September means that we will begin a whole other hectic, frantic routine of getting lunches made and getting children to school on time and doctor's appointments and are there any clean clothes on Monday morning and grocery shopping, frantic, hectic. In other parts of our lives are full too. At work, all of a sudden it's back and it's deadlines and it's expectations and obligations. And our work life and our home life and our church life can sometimes be overwhelming to us. And so I'm just so blessed and thankful for a day like today, for a Sunday, in between the chaos of Halloween, on the edge of more chaos of Christmas coming up, with the expectations that we will face from the world. I'm so blessed, so thankful that we come to this place on this day to hear once more God speaking to us the assurance of our own goodness, not for what we do, not for what we have, but simply because we are God's own children. It is so easy to get lost in the world. It's so easy to get lost in the expectations that the world is going to lay on us. In our homes, in our families, at our work, our partners, our friends, the expectations are so great. It's so easy to get lost and forget what it means to be fully living and fully alive. I was reminded of a story that was in the Globe a little while ago. And it was a story about a waitress who was working at a very, very popular diner in downtown Toronto. I think it would have been the 1960s. And during the lunch hour, when things were at their most frantic pace, during that lunch hour, a boy of about 10 years old came into the diner at the height of lunch peak, rush hour, and takes up an entire booth, sits down. The waitress, frantic with trying to fill orders and having other customers demanding with expectations that they get their food right away, sees this child come in, sitting down, taking up a space, and sees it as just another burden on her and her job. All of the pressure that she's experienced, it just seems to get overwhelming. So she goes to the boy who's managed to sit down and find his place in this booth. And she says, well, what is it that you want? She asks quite briskly, quite cold. And the boy asks her, how much is an ice cream sundae? Oh, an ice cream sundae. The kid wants an ice cream sundae. 50 cents for an ice cream sundae. Oh, okay, he said. So he rummages through his pockets, and he pulls out all his treasure and he lays it out on the table, and there's bottle caps and there's all sorts of lint and rocks and stuff, and there's a few coins too. So he sorts through the coins and he counts his coins, and the woman says, look, I'll be back in a second. You sort yourself out and I'll be back. So the woman goes off, takes care of a few orders, comes back and says, do you know what you're going to have? And he says, yeah, well, how much is just a plain ice cream? Oh, plain ice cream is 35 cents. Okay, he says, I'll have the plain ice cream. Fine. She goes, she gets the boy his ice cream, puts it on the table and slams the bill down beside him as well at the same time as she drops off the ice cream. She goes back to take care of all her other business. The boy finishes his ice cream, gets up, goes to the cashier, pays his bill, and leaves. The waitress, finally seeing that the booth is clear, goes to clear it off so she can make room for the more important customers, the more high-paying customers. And as she removes the plate that was there with the ice cream in the bowl, she stops and she cries. Because there, next to the plate, are 3 nickels. It is so easy to get overwhelmed, so easy to get lost in the world that we miss the simple gifts, the gifts that children have to offer us with their unconditional love when we're overwhelmed with expectations of the world. It seems to me that if anybody knew about getting overwhelmed and expectations, it would have been Jesus. I believe that Jesus would have also experienced a great deal of pressure in his own life, expected to be a certain person, expected to respond to everybody's needs. Jesus knows what it's like. And so what he wants to do is leave us, his friends, with a lesson. He wants to remind us about the true nature of living. He wants to leave us with a lesson so that they can remember in the world after he's gone. They can remember it when the world begins to get hold of them again and they forget who they are and who they were called to be. When the expectations become too much. So his friends, they've arrived in Jerusalem at the end of a long journey. This is the end of the road for Jesus and his friends. It's the last lesson that Jesus is ever going to teach them. And they arrive like celebrities. We all know the story about Jerusalem and what happens when Jesus comes in. This is the time when he comes in and he's met with the big crowd, the celebrity, the palms, the parade, all the adoration. People expecting that Jesus is going to restore once again the people to a place of power and prominence in the world. Restore them again to a kingdom like they've not seen since David. And yet how quickly they are disappointed when Jesus refuses to give into those expectations. So for me, it seemed when reading the gospel lesson this morning that the Sunday is somewhat similar. We have a bit of a resting time here between expectations. A bit of a resting time between the craziness that is the fall and also the craziness that we're going to expect happening at Christmas. This is a time and opportunity, and worship is a time and an opportunity to come, to rest, to find our place again, to be found. Jesus sets up opposite the treasury in the temple. And he has a quiet place. We're told there's no crowd around at this time. No one is around asking Jesus, Jesus, heal me from my blindness. Jesus, turn this bread into a feast. Take this fish and make it into a magnificent banquet. Jesus, heal my daughter. Jesus, cure my leprosy. There's nothing. He sits opposite the treasury. And I like to imagine that Jesus found a nice little quiet Mediterranean coffee shop. A perfect place to watch the world and to reflect on everything that has happened before him and prepare for what's going to happen ahead of him. So he sits opposite the treasury. A treasury is just what it sounds like. It's a bank. However, it's only for deposit. You can't make a withdrawal. It's a treasury, and outside the treasury, which is the main deposit of all the assets of the temple, there are little kiosks or booths that people can come, people that are busy, people that have places to go, things to do, that they can come and they can simply make their offering, drop it off, and continue on their way. Well, Jesus sits opposite one of these treasury boxes. And as he's watching, he says to his friends, we've been here for what? Maybe a couple hours? I don't know. I've noticed, boy, a lot of people are coming and making pretty big donations into the treasury box. But you know what's really amazing? You know what's really funny? I'm watching all these people. None of them look very happy. None of them look very happy about dropping their money into this box. What's that about?